Gaslighting is something that undermines a person's sense of reality. When someone is gaslighting you, you might second guess yourself, your memories, recent events, and perceptions. And I don't think it's always done by people that are purposefully out to manipulate other people or make them doubt themselves. It's most likely done by individuals that don't want to admit any wrongdoing on their part, because that would mean demonstrating that they have weaknesses. While some gaslighters, like narcissists, might truly believe that they're flawless, gaslighting is not always a lack of knowledge that they have weakness. It is the innate lack of desire to admit to such things and prove their imperfections to others. Signs that someone is experiencing gaslighting might include feeling uncertain of their perceptions, frequently questioning if they are remembering things correctly, believing they are irrational or crazy, feeling incompetent, unconfident, or worthless, constantly apologizing to the abusive person, defending the abusive person's behavior to others, or becoming withdrawn or isolated from others. So throughout this video, I'm going to use the terms gaslighter and gaslightee to give examples of the sort of dynamics that are going on. So I want to define them just so you know what I'm talking about. So a gaslighter is the person who pushes blames and responsibility onto others around them rather than taking the ownership of their own behavior. Regardless of a gaslighter's level of self-awareness of their gaslighting behaviors, it is never acceptable, and ignorance of its manipulative effects should not be used as an excuse. The gaslightee is the person who is being made to feel constantly in the wrong for their feelings, behaviors, and actions when upset or hurt by the gaslighter. Quite often, people that are victims of gaslighting can already have deep insecurities about themselves, which makes them easier to manipulate. Gaslighting presents itself in a lot of different ways. Often it's because the gaslighters need to deflect the wrongdoing off of themselves, that the blame ends up being shifted onto the person they have wronged in the first place. Here are some specific examples of ways that I have experienced gaslighting. The gaslighter believes that if they can explain their way through their actions, that it somehow negates any emotional reaction from the gaslightee. For example, you can't be upset because they have logical reasoning behind why they've behaved that way. This makes the gaslightee feel that they were wrong for showing that they were hurt and can lead them to trying to hide their feelings moving forward out of fear that these feelings will not be correct. The next is projecting. The gaslighter might say something like, "I wonder if things would be different if you didn't have anxiety or depression or another mental illness." This is a great example of the gaslighter shifting the focus onto the reaction of the gaslightee rather than taking ownership of their actions, which caused the upset in the first place. This can be even more upsetting for the gaslightee when the person that says it has their own demons to deal with, which may be an underlying cause for the particular behaviours, and yet they're still pushing all of the responsibility onto the gaslightee. And this can be hard because the gaslightee has most likely tried to cater for the mental health issues of the gaslighter in the past, and yet do not feel that they have any space made for their own. The next one is distracting with compassion or sugarcoating. When there seems to be genuine love, they may make you feel like they would never intentionally hurt your feelings. The gaslightee wants to believe this to be true, and so again thinks that it's their own fault that they're feeling hurt. The gaslighter might truly not have meant to have hurt you, but the lack of acknowledgement can still do the same amount of damage. The next one is shifting blame, aka you made me react this way. This one is often used by gaslighters who have explosive or unpredictable reactions. The gaslighter blames the gaslightee for the behaviour because they feel this is easier than reflecting on whether their own behaviour was appropriate or fair. This makes the gaslightee feel that they are responsible for the reactions of others, so they can begin to walk on eggshells, trying not to set off the gaslighter. But this is an unachievable feat because as long as the gaslighter is unable to behave in emotionally appropriate ways, there will continue to be blame shifted. The next one is trivializing, which means downplaying their own behavior to make it seem like the gaslightee is just overly sensitive or overreacting to what happened. Quite often, the gaslightee's response is valid and reasonable in relation to what occurred, but they're made to feel that they once again are the issue here. So there's a lot of lasting effects that can come from someone gaslighting you. It erodes a person's trust in themselves and makes them forget what they once valued about themselves. It's easy to blame themselves for being too trusting, vulnerable, or dependent. The experience makes some victims never want to be part of a relationship again because they fear that the cycle's just going to repeat. Gaslighting contributes to anxiety, depression, and trauma in some cases, where those repeating patterns just become your life. Because the constant knocking down of who you are as a person can really cause your self-esteem to suffer. Sadly, a lot of people that have experienced gaslighting from a young age have deeply rooted self-doubt, so may believe that they really are the problem. The more people that gaslight them, the more evidence they have that they're the problem. Unfortunately, in some situations, the gaslightee might actually exhibit gaslighting behaviour. If they have been gaslighted from a young age, they might believe that this pattern of reaction and response is the normal way to behave. Once the gaslightee realises themselves that they might have inflicted similar pain onto others that they have experienced themselves, this might increase the levels of shame and self-esteem issues that they experience. Trouble making decisions. When you are constantly made to feel like your actions and reactions are wrong, making decisions can be daunting because somewhere in the back of your mind you assume that you will not be able to make the correct choice. Hypervigilance. They learn to distrust others' motives due to being repeatedly hurt, and the psychological impact of managing that becomes overwhelming. Surviving the constant stress of a situation like this can cause a lot of anxiety. Victims sense impending doom, feel they exist in a world that is unsafe, and experience deep panic at situations that feel outside of their control. The reason for that is logical. They have been vulnerable and exposed to chronic abuse centered around the robbing of their personal power. So, what can you do if you believe you've been gaslighted? Well, knowledge is power in this situation. Once the victim understands what's occurring, they can start to take their power back and protect themselves from further abuse. It can be difficult, but empowering because you are able to recognize that you were treated in a way that wasn't okay and that you didn't deserve it. And in the future, you'll be able to see the signs and not allow yourself to be sucked in. Learning how to grow your own self-worth will help you understand that you do deserve to be treated with respect, that your emotions are valid, and you deserve to have people in your life that are able to acknowledge your feelings without making them a problem. It may mean stepping away from relationships that have provided some comfort and validation, but were overall abusive. Love within manipulation is not real love. If you have family members, a partner, a friend that treats you this way and gaslights you, you need to have some self-respect and step away, because in the long run, all they want from you is your attention and your validation. And if you stop giving that to them, you'll start to realize that you're not as important to them as you thought you were. This is a brief summary of gaslighting, but I hope that it's been able to explain a little bit more in depth how these things can really affect a person's whole psyche. Over a lifetime, it builds into a person's real sense of who they are and the way that the world is. And unfortunately, the cycle can continue with new people that come into their lives because the gaslightee, to some degree actually believes that they deserve it, but you don't. And you need to trust yourself to step away from situations that don't feel right.